Kana Hop Napi relatives and Biwa Tahushka Obi Miha. And I said, good day, relatives. My name is Obi Miha in Tudelo. So the video I'm bringing to you today is called Free African Americans of North Carolina and Virginia. So starting off with this video or this article. It's on genealogy.com. That's where I got it from. By a gentleman named Paul Heineck. And as I read this article, you're actually going to see a lot of hijacks that we're going to have to dodge. First of all, the title alone is major hijack. We know no one back then was calling themselves African Americans. The person who wrote this article decided to throw that in there because we know back then it was either free people of color, free Negroes, free mulattoes, whatever. But we definitely know this hijack, free African or African Americans, was definitely not there. All right, so here we go. This is first thing. Here you go. It says here, you can get a taste of Paul Heineck's research and writing through the introduction he wrote for this book. Even if you are not researching families from these locations and time periods, you will find that the introduction provides you with an interesting look at African American life during the time period. Specifically, he shows how the social status of many landowning, dodge the hijack again, African American families. So we'll replace that with American Indian families. Changed so much over the years that by the 20th century, they had no idea their ancestors had been free. So again, ADOS thing, better do your research. You may find that your people were free and always have been. It is lengthy, so you may prefer to print it rather than reading it online. Footnotes for the introduction are included at the bottom of this page. However, to get information about citations shown in square brackets, please refer to the complete book. So let's get into the introduction. These genealogies comprising the colonial history of the majority of the free American Indian families of Virginia and North Carolina reveal a facet of American colonial history previously overlooked by historians. First bullet point says, most families were the descendants of white servant women who had children by slaves or free American Indians. Families like Gowen, Cumbo, and Driggers, who were free in the mid-17th century, had several hundred members before the end of the colonial period. They were descended from slaves who were freed before the 1723 Virginia law, which required legislative approval for manumissions. It says very few families descended from white slave owners who had children by their slaves, perhaps as low as 1% of the total. Now you hear this. I'm going to read it again. Very few families descended from white slave owners who had children by their slaves, perhaps as low as 1% of the total. I'll continue. Many free American Indian families in colonial North Carolina and Virginia were landowners. The light-skinned descendants of these families formed the triracial isolate communities of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Louisiana. So you take what you want out of this triracial thing. I'm just reading what the guy wrote. So first off, we're going to start in Virginia. Most of the free African Americans of Virginia and North Carolina originated in Virginia, where they became free in the 17th and 18th century before chattel slavery and racism fully developed in the United States. Since when they arrived in Virginia, Africans joined a society which was divided between master and white servant, a society with such contempt for white servants that masters were not punished for beating them to death. That's interesting. Anyway, I'll continue. They joined the same household with white servants, working, eating, sleeping, getting drunk, and running away together. Then it's got these Northampton orders, 1664 to 74, and some page numbers, minutes of council, different things like that. Now it's going to say that these people were Africans. And again, I know, you know, the Jamestown story, slaves got here, blah, 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 Africans first got here. But again, these people are being called Negroes, not Africans. So that leads me to believe they've been here. Anyway, John Gowen, and you see how it's all, we're going to see all these different spellings of these names. So again, keep telling you about this. A Negro servant was free in March 1641, according to the Virginia Council and General Court records. And it lists them right here. So maybe in another video, we'll look this up. Francis Payne of Northampton County paid for his freedom about 1650 by purchasing 3 white servants for his master's use. Emmanuel Cumbo, Negro, was granted 50 acres in James City County on April 18, 1667, patent book. John Harris, Negro, was free in 1668 when he purchased 50 acres in York County, deed 1664 to 72. So as you can see here, it's claiming to talk about the first slaves. Again, until they show proof that these people were African, they need to quit putting this title in here. Because once again, I've said this time and time again, words matter. So we got to get this out of here. This word African. You show they came from Africa, then we'll believe it. Until then, this needs out of there. Anyway, many were free on the Eastern Shore. There were at least 40 taxable American Indians in Northampton County in the 1670s, who were free or later became free, representing 1/3 of the taxable American Indians in the county. Again, I'm not going to use this African American word because that is not what they called themselves back then, and that is not how they were listed. So we're going to dodge that hijack, keep on dodging it. The Nickens and Weaver families came from Lancaster County, where Black Dick Richard Nickens, his wife Chris, and their children were freed by the 1690 will of John Carter, wills 1690 to 1709. Free African Americans were, free American Indians were beginning to be assimilated into colonial Virginia society. Many were the result of mixed race marriages. So it goes on to say that Francis Payne was married to a white woman named Amy by September 1656, when he gave her a mare by deed of jointure. Francis Skipper was married to Anne, an American Indian woman, before February 1667, when they sold land in Norfolk County. Peter Beckett, a Negro slave, taxable from 1671 to 1677, in Northampton County, Virginia, married Elizabeth Kettle, a white woman servant of John Telney, orders 1664 to 74. Hester Tate, an English woman servant in Westmoreland County, had several children by her husband James Tate, a Negro slave to Mr. Patrick Spence, before 1690. Elizabeth Kay, a mulatto woman whose father had been free, successfully sued for her freedom in Northumberland County in 1690 and married her white attorney William Greenstead. Then it says, as a percentage of American Indians increased, so did tensions between free American Indians and slaveholders. In 1666, Bastion Kane, Negro, was punished by Northampton County for harboring, concealing, and trading with Francis Pigot's Negro slave. And as more and more slaves replaced white servants, the legislature passed a series of laws which designated slavery as the appropriate condition for American Indians. And then the next thing goes on to say, as a percentage of African Americans increased, so the tensions between free African Americans and slaveholders. We just read that. In 1670, the Virginia Assembly forbade free American Indian. See, so here's another hijack. So it says free African Americans and Indians from owning white servants. So again, same people. In 1691, the Assembly prohibited the manumission of slaves unless they were transported out of the colony. It also prohibited interracial marriages and ordered the illegitimate mixed-race children of white women bound out for 30 years. In 1705, the Assembly passed a law which all but eliminated the ability of slaves to earn their freedom by ordering that the farm stock of slaves shall be seized and sold by the church, by church wardens of the parish, wherein such horses, cattle, or hogs shall be, and the profit thereof applied to the use of the poor of the said parish. In 1712, all 15 members of the Anderson and Richards family were freed and given 640 acres. Andersons and Richards. That is your surname. Definitely check into this. 640 acres in Norfolk County, Virginia, by the will of John Fulcher, creating such a stir that the Legislative Council on March 5th, 1712, proposed that the Assembly provided a law against such manumissions of slaves, which may in time, by their increase in correspondence with other slaves, may endanger the peace of this colony. Then it says, in an effort to prevent their correspondence with other slaves, Fulcher's executor, Lewis Connor, by a deed dated 20 March 1712, swapped their land in Norfolk County with land on a Welsh Creek in Chowan County, North Carolina. That's interesting. In 1723, the Assembly prohibited the freeing of slaves except in cases where they had rendered some public service, such as foiling a slave revolt. So you see, they were, says here anyway, that they were freeing slaves that they told on other slaves about a slave revolt. Also in 1723, the Assembly amended the 1705 taxation law to make female free American Indians over the age of 16 tiffable. Despite the efforts of the legislator, white servant women continued to bear children by American Indian fathers through the late 17th century and well into the 18th century from these genealogies. It appears that they were the primary source of the increase in the free African American population for this period. At least 65 of the families in this history appear to be descendants of white women. I don't know about that, but that's what it says. Many of these white servant women may have been the common law wives of slaves, since they had several mixed race children. 36 families appear to be descended from freed slaves. It is likely that the majority of the remaining families were also descendants of white women, since they first appear in court according to the mid-18th century, when slaves could not be freed without legislative approval, and there is no record of legislative approval for their emancipations. Scroll up a little bit here. The replacement of white servants with African slaves began in earnest in 1660, continued for more than a century. That's the hijack here. African slaves had still not completely replaced white servants by 17 October 1773, when the jailer in Prince William County advertised in Virginia Gazette that he had caught a runaway white servant man. Committed to Prince William Gold, a certain William Rawlings, who says he is the property of Francis Smith of Chesterfield. The owner is desired to pay charges and take him away. And he advertised in the same edition that he had jailed a runaway white servant woman committed to the goal of Prince William's, a servant woman about 26 years of age named Mary Richardson, has on a short printed cotton gown and striped Virginia cloth petticoat. Racial contempt for African Americans did not fully develop as long as there were white servants in similar circumstances. It was during this period, as late as the end of the 18th century, that free African Americans were accepted, dodge the hijack, in white community. Like the newly freed white servants, the first free American Indians moved to the frontier, which was then the South Side counties of Virginia, the county of New Kent, the northeastern part of North Carolina, where land was available to anyone who could pay the taxes and was willing to brave frontier conditions. By 1790, free African Americans, dodge the hijack, were concentrated in these areas, representing about 10% of the free population of the Eastern Shore, 6% of New Kent, 8% of the free population of 12 Southside Virginia counties, and 17% of the free population of York County, heads of families, Virginia. The total other free population in Southampton County alone exceeded the total other free population in 22 other Virginia counties. And that's going to be one of our notes at the bottom. The replacement of white servants Yeah, we read that already. Okay. So it goes on to say that many originated in or moved to Surrey County, Virginia, where their deeds, marriage bonds, and wills were recorded in the 17th and 18th century. Now it's going to list some of the family surnames. They were the Banks, Blizzard, Bird, Charity, Chavis, Cornish, DeBricks, Jeffries, Kersey's, Peters, Scott, Sweat, Tan, Valentine, Walden, and Wilson families. Descriptions in the Surrey County, Virginia Registry of Free Negroes, the late 18th and 19th century reads, Armstead Peters, a mulatto man. Now I want you guys to pay attention to this, okay? Pay attention to what I'm reading, this part here. Armstead Peters, a mulatto man, aged about 56 years, born free of a yellowish complexion, 6 October 1774. Now, James Williams, a mulatto man, pretty dark complexion, born of free parents, residents of this county, 35 years old, 11 May 1797. Joseph Bird, son of Joseph and Nellie Bird, free mulatto persons and resident of this county, 20 years old, 5'5" height, bright complexion, short thick hair, straight and well made. William Tan, a mulatto man and son of Jemima Tan, a white woman late of this county. He is a bright complexion, has straight black hair, pretty stout and straight made, age 21, last December 3rd, 1801, back to the Guardian account book, 1783, 1804. So, the reason why I told you to pay attention to this, they're listing all of these people as mulatto. And all of these mulatto people come in different complexions. So you got the yellowish, you got, bright complexion, and you have pretty dark complexion. So again, what does mulatto really mean? Does it mean American Indian, or does it mean mixed race? I don't know. You tell me. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. Excuse me. Many baptized their children in Bruton and Middleton Parish, James City, and Charles City counties between 1744 and 1767. They were, again, we're going to go over some more surnames. Always family, Armfield, Ashby, Banks, Bartley, Chavis, Cooper, Flowers, Freeman, Gillette, Grimes, Jameson, Jones, Lewis, Macklin, Peters, Red Cross, Roberts, Rosarios, Tan, Wallace, and Williams families who came from as far away as Southampton County. Esther Goyne was among 9 free Negroes and mulattoes who came by boat to Norfolk County from Maryland in August 1692. Since so many free American Indians were light-skinned, now here's another important paragraph, so let me scroll up on here. And yes, so here's another, I'm going to highlight it here. I want you to pay attention to this as well. Since so many African Americans were light-skinned, Dodge the hijack. American Indians were light-skinned. That's funny. Many observers assumed they were the offspring of white slave owners who took advantage of their female slaves. Only one of more than 280 families in this history was proven to descend from a white slave owner. I'll read that again. Only one of more than 280 families in this history was proven to descend from a white slave owner. We keep being told that, light-skinned people coming from white slave masters raping the American Indian woman. Okay. Then it says Jean Lovina, the slave of John Nichols, was probably his mistress, since he called her his Negro woman and her children my two mulattoes, when he gave them their freedom and left them with 350 acres by his 11 November 1698 Norfolk County will. So, pretty interesting that all these people are getting all these, lots of tracts of land. So, again, I'm going to have the link for this article in the description of this video, and you could read through this, but this is pretty lengthy, so I'm going to stop on this part for now, and next video I do will go into the North Carolina portion of this, but this first half I believe was Virginia. Let me scroll back up here and make sure. Yeah, so that first part was Virginia. Again, some really good information, also some hijacks in there that you got to dodge, so just beware. Some surnames in there that you might want to check out. The thing I want you to take away from the video or the article is that when they're writing these articles, they have to stop with the African American nonsense. Again, we weren't called this back then. He obviously looked through the records and paperwork. So write down what they were called. Stop putting in what you want it to be, what you think we are. We're not from Africa. No such thing as an African American. We refuse this title. We're American Indians. Some people call themselves Aboriginals, Indigenous. If you want to, use those terms, fine. I know the paperwork probably said Negro, mulatto, whatever. American, it may even say Indian in there, but you got to use the terminology. Free people of color, whatever it is. But, stop using the African American term on us. Let me stop screen sharing real quick here. But that's what I wanted to bring to everybody today. Like I said, I'll do another video on the rest of that article because it is really good, has some good information in it. And again, I hope it helps. I hope it helps people in their genealogy searches, because that's what I'm here for. This is why I do this, to help out, our relatives out there, the American Indians who are in search of family records, whatever it may be. But again, this is Opie Miha, and many blessings to all of you. One love to you all. And as always, I will see you next time. Later.